Hi, my name is Tom Wilson. I'm the priest at All Saints Episcopal Church here in Southern Shores, North Carolina. And this is the sermon for Pentecost Sunday on June the 8th, 2014. Now, one of the things we're going to be doing today is also on Sunday is going to be honoring our seniors in high school who are going to be graduating. So this is influenced by that event, but also influenced by the Book of Acts, chapter 2, 1 through 21 verses, and John's Gospel, chapter 20, verses 19 through 23. And I'll start off by saying, today is the Feast of Pentecost, but before we deal with the Pentecost story, let me remind you of another story, the Tower of Babel story, myth from the Book of Genesis. I call it a myth because a myth is a story which attempts to explain why things are as they are. Myths show up in many different cultures, but in similar ways, and tell somewhat of the same story because most civilizations want to understand the world about them. So each culture gathers together, and in their search for truth, they enter their unconscious connections to a collective unconscious and relate their public dreams in symbolic forms, which ends up as stories which may or may not be factually correct, but which carry a deeper truth. And the way for me to understand the concept of a myth is by defining a myth as a public dream, and a dream as a private myth. And in the individual experience, the events of a dream may seem rather fantastic to our logical minds as it remembers them, but they are messages from our true self, our soul, if you will, the place where God's true self connects with us, and we are in connection with all of creation, which occurs in our unconscious when we're asleep. These dreams may come to drive home a deeper truth about us, about the divine, and about the world we live in. As you remember the Tower of Babel myth story, the people of the earth are so all connected to each other through inheritance from Noah after the flood story and from Adam and Eve as part of the whole creation myth. Now, this may or may not be factually correct, but it's backed up by DNA evidence which shows that people all over the world are genetically connected to each other. In the story, the people who are all connected to each other, but they're also filled with their own pride and arrogance. And they decide to build a tower on the plain of Shinar to reach to the heavens to make a name for themselves. To make a name means to be in charge of their own identity as equals with God. And out of this folly, in the story, the myth, the tower is scattered, and the people are scattered from each other by language, and as their differences develop and harden into habits of culture and race and color. The myth tells us that we are all related as brothers and sisters, but we act as strangers to each other, as in our own arrogance, we view each other as potential enemies. Now, the story of the Pentecost experience, therefore, is a recapitulation of the Tower of Babel story, but told in reverse. It begins with the disciples all scattered, but they come together. And they're gathered together, men and women, all as an intentional community, not to rise up as a challenge to God, but to enter into the name of God, to have their identities fashioned by the Spirit of the living God. And they face a challenge. And they'll have some anxiety about having enough strength to meet that challenge. But here in that room, the community's members empty out their fears, empty out their arrogance, for indeed, arrogances are only fears in disguise, and empty out their differences. And they rediscover that they're connected at a deeper level to each other, and indeed to all the world. The emptying out of themselves, that they are the special ones, is to leave room in their soul for God's Spirit to come into their lives. the Spirit, the wind, the breath of God comes and drives them out into the world to meet the world on its own terms in order to share the contents of their soul in such a way as to knock down and transcend the barriers of geography, habits of life, language, race, and color. Now, we can spend a lot of time arguing how or if this story factually happened, or we can accept the book of Acts as the stories the church tells to explain how the followers of Jesus changed from their dependence on the physical presence of Jesus and allowed themselves to be filled with the wind, the breath, the Spirit of the living God. This transformation allows them to leave their homes, to go into all the world in order to share their hearts and souls with previously unmet people who are members of the larger family, but only disguised as strangers. The disciples have a choice. They could be like the people at Babel and try to build themselves up as towers to take the place of God in their lives. Or they could, as they did, empty themselves out in love in order to bring peace and forgiveness to the broken world. The stories of the books of Acts indeed act as our mythic story of how we are to deal with our faith, and especially how we go out in the world from this church. And I'm especially aware of it as I look out at our group of graduating high school seniors, so all grown up, but I first met them when they were finishing first grade. That's how long it's been. And for me, that's sometimes what they look like. I look at them and I remember them. And part of what we're doing here is saying they're no longer to be kept safe from the world. It's time for them to face new challenges. And part of what we will do is to breathe the breath of God on them and to send them out to be adults in the world, doing the ministry of sharing the divine Spirit within them. This is still their home, and they can always return because they're always in our hearts. But we send them out as ministers. And as they go on to the next phase of their lives, they'll meet many different kinds of people from many different cultures and different belief systems. And their job is not to convert people, but to honor them where they are, and at the same time, share with them the truth that is in their own souls. And what our graduates will find is that they need to go deeper into their own souls to be able to communicate the mystery that is inside them. This is not a time for glib doctrines or memorized prayers or easy cynicism, but rather for a hard struggle to find the dreams that are percolating inside their true self, the ones they were created to be. God does not speak to their souls in chronic, undifferentiated formulae, but each dream the divine dreamer implants in us is different, as each of them is different. And yet, we're all connected, and our dreams are connected. Each of them and us, we're connected. And so are the brothers and sisters we've not yet met. They're all connected in God's love. The lesson from the Gospel of John for today shows us who we are to be. We are the body of Christ. And in this Gospel, Jesus comes in body form to the people who had let him down and announced peace and forgiveness. Therefore, if we are the body of Christ, we are the peace givers and agents of forgiveness. Peace is not a cessation of conflict, but the bringing of wholeness to broken people. Strengthen the weak. We live in a broken world, and we have a love affair with violence. But our job is to heal the brokenhearted, strengthen the weak, stand up for the persecuted, and work for justice. Forgiveness is a gift that we give to those who have disappointed us. And so I ask the graduates to forgive me as their priest, because I may have let them down when I was not there when they needed me. We ask them to forgive the church, us, the church, where and when we have let them down. We ask them to forgive their parents. We try as much as we can, but we wish we were better. We ask them that they learn how to forgive themselves, as God has already forgiven them and us. And I ask you as a parish to help to keep these students in the holy space of your hearts as they do our work of ministry in other places to bring about God's dream for us. God bless you.